The air in the Stardog's hold was thick with the smell of recycled oxygen, stale coffee, and regret. Kale wiped a greasy hand across his brow, staring at the manifest on his datapad. The numbers weren't adding up, and they hadn't for years. Another botched job on a backwater moon. Another client who'd paid in promises and scrap. "The transfer is half," the Wesleyan broker had hissed, its insectoid mandibles clicking. "The rest, we have a different commodity." Kale had scoffed. "I don't deal in commodities. I deal in credits. This one is special. High value. You'll see." What emerged from the broker's shuttle wasn't special. It was a female of a species Kale didn't recognize, tall, slender, with skin the color twilight, and hair like spun silver. She was clad in simple, gray rags, but it was her eyes that unnerved him. They weren't downcast or fearful. They were the color of amethyst, and they held a calm, ancient stillness that looked straight through his soul. "A slave?" Kale had spat. "You're paying me with a slave? She's skinny. She'll barely fetch a price on Orkson 6. She is compliant. Stronger than she looks," the broker insisted, shoving her forward. "Take her. Consider the debt cleared." Desperation had a bitter taste. Kale had taken her. Now. She sat silently in the corner of the hold, her chains, a formality he'd insisted on, seeming more like an insult than a restraint. She moved with a grace that was utterly out of place on his rust bucket of a ship. She didn't cower. She observed. She'd watch him patch a fuel line or calibrate the NAV computer with an expression that wasn't quite curiosity, more like assessment. He called her princess as a cruel joke, a way to puncture her infuriating dignity. "Enjoy the view, princess," he'd grunt, throwing a nutrient pack at her. "Better get used to it. Orkson's mining pits are a lot less scenic." She would catch the pack neatly, her gaze never leaving his. She never thanked him, never spoke a word. He told himself her silence was ignorance, but it felt more like contempt. Their first and only stop before the grim destination of Orkson 6 was a grimy way station called the Rusty Bolt. Kale was in a dark cantina, trying to offload some scavenged tech, when he saw the Galnet newsfeed. The headline blazed across the screen: "Heir to the Lyrian throne missing. Colossal reward offer for safe return." The image attached was a holographic portrait. It showed a being of breathtaking beauty, adorned in jewels and silks, a luminous, intricate crown upon her brow. The face, despite the finery, was unmistakable. It was her, the slave in his hold, Lyra, the last princess of the Lyrian Dominion. A civilization so advanced and wealthy they made the galactic core look impoverished. Kale's blood ran cold. The reward offer was more credits than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. But the warning beneath was stark. Wanted by the Shadow Cabal. Extremely dangerous. Consider armed and hostile. The Shadow Cabal, the most feared mercenary syndicate in the galaxy. If they were involved, this was far bigger than a simple kidnapping. He stumbled back to the Stardog, his mind reeling. He burst into the hold, the cantina's neon light bleeding through the viewport and painting her in garish colors. She looked up, her calm expression unchanged. "You," he stammered, pointing a shaking finger. "You're her, the princess." For the first time, she spoke. Her voice was like wind chimes, clear and melodic. "I am." The simplicity of it enraged him. "You let me think you were a slave. I was going to sell you to the mines." A faint, sad smile touched her lips. "You were in no danger from me, Kale. The danger is from those who seek me. The broker who gave me to you was a Cabal agent. They use fools like him to move me through the galaxy, hiding me in plain sight until they can extract me far from prying eyes. You were an unintended detour. The pieces clicked into a terrifying mosaic. He wasn't a captor. He was a pawn, a disposable mule. And now that he knew what he had, he was a dead man. As if on cue, the ship's proximity alarm blared. 2 sleek, black Cabal interceptors dropped out of warp, their weapon systems powering up. "See," Lyra said, her voice still infuriatingly calm. "They are here." Panic seized Kale. He was a scavenger, a brawler, not a naval pilot. The Stardog couldn't outrun them. He slammed his hand on the console, sending the ship lurching into a desperate evasive pattern. Laser fire streaked past the viewport. "There is a way," Lyra said, rising to her feet. The chains clinked. "My people are not just wealthy, Kale. We are attuned. The patterns on my skin are not just ceremonial." He glanced at her. In the pulsing red light of the battle alert, the faint, almost invisible tracery on her arms and neck began to glow with a soft, cyan light. It swirled and shifted like living constellations. "A biomap," she explained. "It interfaces with technology. Give me access to your NAV computer." It was madness. Trust an alien princess he'd meant to sell into slavery to fly his ship, but the alternative was being blasted into atoms. He punched the command, unlocking the primary controls. Lyra closed her eyes. The glowing patterns on her skin brightened, and her hands, still bound, hovered over the console. The Stardog's archaic systems whirred to life in a way he'd never heard. Readings flashed across the screen at an impossible speed. A jump trajectory he'd never seen, using gravitational anomalies he didn't know existed, was plotted in a nanosecond. "Hold on," she said, her voice now carrying a strain of power. The ship shuddered violently as a laser blast scored a direct hit on the rear shields. Then, with a wrenching groan that threatened to tear the hull apart, the Stardog catapulted into a jump point so precise it was practically theoretical. The blackness of space stretched into impossible colors, and the pursuing ships vanished from the scopes. When the ship reverted to normal space, they were floating in a silent, unknown sector, a nebula of breathtaking beauty swirling outside. Kale slumped in his chair, breathless. He looked at Lyra. The glow on her skin had faded, and she looked pale, drained. The chains on her wrists seemed more absurd than ever. Slowly he stood, found the key, and walked over to her. He didn't say a word as he unlocked the manacles. They felt the floor with a heavy, final clang. She rubbed her wrists, looking at him not with gratitude, but with newfound respect. "The Cabal will not stop. They wish to use me to access my family's vaults, to cripple the Dominion." Kale looked around his battered ship, then back at her. He was a cynic. He'd seen the worst the galaxy had to offer, but in her, he saw something else. A purpose, a cause, and attached to that cause was a reward that could buy him a new life. But as he looked into her amethyst eyes, he realized the credits didn't seem to matter as much as they had an hour ago. He had been a scavenger, picking at the scraps of the galaxy. Now, he held the fate of a princess in his hand.